Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Hey, so glad you're with us for the Wednesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Good, bad, crazy martinis for you today. Been a little bit of an interesting morning here in Columbus land. I told you a couple of days ago when we were talking about the California wildfires about how we had a neighbor a couple doors down a couple of years ago, had a small house fire that kept him out for a few months. Now a couple doors in the other direction had a fire this morning. So we're all out there bonding as neighbors and wishing the best. Fortunately, no one was home, so there's no injuries there. It's going to be a considerable amount of interior damage, and so my prayers are certainly with them. But great credit to the local fire department and surrounding counties even showing up. There were more fire trucks on our street than I think that showed up for the threat at Chester A. Arthur Elementary School in New York in Die Hard 3. It was an impressive, swift response. Grateful for that and grateful to get back to normal. Normal sounds pretty darn good right now.
I was going to say, we've been talking a lot about firefighters on this podcast lately. Went through a small fire in the bottom level of our 2-level townhouse back in Alexandria. Firefighters were right there, worked really fast. You love to see these guys, and they always seem to have just the right touch when you're at your worst. So thanks to them. But so I simply had figured you dialed 911 upon smelling smoke, and on some frequency you weren't supposed to use, and you said, "What do you think? I'm just trying to order a pizza."
Oh, man. Jim, let's dive right in. Confirmation hearings continuing for folks like Marco Rubio for Secretary of State, Pam Bondi for Attorney General. I'm sure the Democrats are going to have their dander up for those as well, but I'm not sure it'll quite meet the level that we saw yesterday in the Senate Armed Services Committee. I mentioned in jest at the outset of yesterday's podcast that they had the mental giants of Blumenthal, Hirono, Warren, Gillibrand. Oh my gosh, it was just super impressive yesterday. Well, the one thing that actually was impressive, Pete Hegseth, in his opening statement, I think he said a lot of things that after what we've seen the Biden administration try to force into the military, seemed like a breath of fresh air.
Our standards will be high and they will be equal, not equitable. That's a very different word. We need to make sure every warrior is fully qualified on their assigned weapon system, every pilot's fully qualified and current on the aircraft they are flying, and every general or flag officer is selected for leadership or promotion purely based on performance, readiness, and merit. Leaders at all levels will be held accountable, and warfighting and lethality and the readiness of the troops and their families will be our only focus.
All right, but that's not what the Democrats were focused on. Only time for a couple of clips here. First of all, always our favorite, Mazie Hirono. You can feel your brain cells dying every time she opens her mouth, but here's what went viral for her yesterday.
Would you use our military to take over Greenland or an ally of Denmark?
Senator, one of the things that President Trump is so good at is never strategically tipping his hand. And so I would never in this public forum give one way or another direct what orders the president would give me in any context.
That sounds to me that you would contemplate carrying out such an order to basically invade Greenland.
Yeah, totally what I took from that, Mazie. Absolutely. And then our favorite HOA narc, Elizabeth Warren, thought she had a gotcha moment.
In other words, you're quite sure that every general who serves should not go directly into the defense industry for 10 years. But you're not willing to make that same pledge?
I'm not a general, Senator.
Then you also had Kirsten Gillibrand going off in very high decibels about comments Hegseth has made about women serving in combat in particular, but she tried to, of course, extrapolate it to the whole military. And then Tim Kaine, of all people, decided to go all personal and talk about the things that are character flaws, at least in the past, for Pete Hegseth, about alleged drinking, certainly the failed marriages and the infidelity and so forth. And then Mark Wayne Mullen shot back at him saying, how many drunk people have you seen show up to vote? You don't ask them to step down to senators or philandering senators. You don't ask them to step down. I do think character matters. I think it's hard for senators to take the high ground in a lot of cases because they do have a lot of skeletons in the closet. So, Jim, ultimately, It looks like Hegseth is probably going to be okay here. It looks like the Democrats probably did themselves more harm than good because they were more interested in putting on a show than trying to change any minds, I think.
Yeah, look, going into yesterday, it was extremely likely that either all or almost all Republican senators were going to vote to confirm Pete Hegseth, and all or almost all Democrats were going to vote to oppose the nomination. The hearing went on for like 4 or 5 hours, and nothing changed out of that. But if you think that exchange by Tim Kaine went bad, Greg, one thing I will note is that he doesn't have to worry. Nobody's going to remember this in a couple of years. In part because nobody remembers anything about Tim Kaine, including the fact that he was Hillary's running mate, as he was able to laugh about in a Saturday Night Live sketch. No, so why is this the good martini? Democrats on the Senate Armed Services Committee you could argue whether they haven't learned the lessons of the 2024 election. When you do this, you can go one of two routes. If you really want to stop the nominee, you have 47 Democrats, and they're probably all no's. Maybe Fetterman's a little shaky. I had somebody say yesterday, what about Manchin? Joe Manchin is no longer a U.S. Senator. His term ended January 3rd. So there aren't that many shaky Democrats in the Senate left. But so maybe you got at least 46. So you're looking to get, remember, if there's a tie, J.D. Vance breaks the tie. So if you've got every Democrat, you need 4. If Fetterman flips, you would need 5, right? So you really need to get a bunch of, a decent number. So all of your questioning has to be in a way that will make those at least 5 Senate Republicans feel second thoughts about nominating Hegseth, wondering, is this guy really going to, ready for it? Is he going to do stuff policies that I like, or is this going to be a disaster or something bad? And none of them chose to do that. They chose to play to the donor base. They chose to play to the progressives. Look, I don't want to shock you, but no Senate Republican is going to vote against Hegseth based on an anonymous accusation. They're just not. We are in a post-Brett Kavanaugh world. They do not believe what's in, some unnamed source of Jane Meyer from the New Yorker says anymore. That's just not enough to persuade them. Now, in today's Morning Jolt, I laid out that if you really wanted to undermine Hegseth, and I thought about this a few days ago, but I did not write it until after the confirmation hearing. And ironically, it came up in the hearing, but not in a particularly confrontational manner. Elon Musk argues that manned fighter jets are no longer useful, that the advent of drones and drone technology and swarming drones and China's reliance on large fleets of cheap drones is creating air superiority, and that the era of manned fighter jets is over. Different people who work in the Air Force, Navy. By the way, you know how the U.S. is the toughest military in the world? We only have one Air Force, but every branch of the military has stuff that fly. So the question is, should we be, shifting in this direction? Should we? It was even a subplot in Top Gun Maverick. Is the era of the fighter pilot over? Now they make fighter jets in South Carolina, in Texas, and in Missouri. Each one of those states has 2 Republican senators. None of those senators want to see any jobs lost in any of them. So if you say, nominee Hegseth, Elon Musk says the era of fighter jets is over and we should be converting over to all drones. Do you agree with Musk? Now, they asked a version of this question and Hegseth kind of punted. He said he wants to get under the hood and take a look or something like that. It's unlikely that we're going to completely eliminate fighter jets. But I think as you look at the U.S. air armada year by year, you're going to see more and more drones. You're going to see fewer and fewer fighter jets. Now, the facilities that are making fighter jets now can probably be converted to create drones, but it would definitely be an end of an era. There definitely would be some economic pain in that transition. But this would be, that would be a tough question that would put Hegseth on the spot, because he's either got to say, no, Musk doesn't know what he's talking about, or he's got to say, yeah, actually, Musk has a point. And either way, you're making 6 Republican senators feel a little nervous. If I vote for this guy, are they going to have fewer fighter jets being made in my home state in the next couple of years? But they didn't do that. Because you have to know stuff about what the defense industrial base. You have to know stuff about what's being made in these places. And Greg, that's just too hard. We can ask you about, instead, what do you know about the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, which is an economic alliance. It's not a military alliance. And oh, by the way, the United States is not a part of it. And not a member state. Way to go. You got him, Duckworth.
They really thought that was a gotcha question. Yeah, I remember that. I think the era of the fighter pilot might be changing. I do not think it is over yet, but always advancing into the new technology. But ultimately,
Maverick said, it may end, but not today, sir.
Yeah, it looks like Hegseth is on the path. Elizabeth Warren was on CNN last night when I think it was Caitlin Collins told her that Joni Ernst was officially going to be a yes. And, she gave you that look like your grass hadn't been cut in a little over 2 weeks. And wasn't pleased.
But let's point out, Joni Ernst was not a fan or was not an enthusiastic supporter of Hegseth when he was named. And they've had meetings, and she was certainly inching in that direction. But boy, if you were a Democrat trying to torpedo no pun intended, trying to torpedo the Hegseth nomination, you'd be like trying to make the kinds of arguments that would persuade Joni Ernst. And they just weren't interested in it. Just wasn't enough priority.
No. They just wanted the TikTok clips, I guess, as long as it's legal for now. All right, let's talk about Oracle. If you think that AI, which I think Elon Musk is seeing as the future here, is a bit overhyped, it is everywhere, from self-driving cars to molecular medicine to business efficiency. And if it's not in your industry yet, it is coming, and it's coming fast. But AI needs a lot of speed and a lot of computing power. So how do you compete without your costs spiraling out of control? Well, it's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI.
OCI is a blazing fast and secure platform for all of your infrastructure, database, and application development needs, plus all of your AI and machine learning workloads. OCI costs 50% less for computing and 80% less for networking, so you're saving a pile of money. Thousands of businesses have already upgraded to OCI, including Vodafone, Thomson Reuters, and Suno AI.
Right now, Oracle is offering to cut your current cloud bill in half if you move to OCI. This is for new U.S. customers with minimum financial commitment. Offer ends March 31st. See if your company qualifies for this special offer at oracle.com/martini. That's oracle.com/martini. All right, on to our bad martini now, Jim, and there's certainly some elements of crazy to this. This is a multi-layered story. It's not just the U.S. Congress, of course, that's convening a new session. It's state legislatures all across the country. And let's stop in on Tim Walz's state of Minnesota here, where not only did Tim Walz help Kamala Harris win by a smaller margin than Joe Biden won with Kamala Harris in 2020, Republicans, for the moment, have the majority in the Minnesota House of Representatives. And so right now it's 67 to 66. There is a special election to be held January 28th for a vacant seat, and it appears Democrats don't want to convene the House until that race is settled. The Republicans want to start the session. The Democrats don't. So the Democrats somehow swore themselves in before the start of the session and are now boycotting the start of the session, so there's no quorum, meaning there's not enough people to actually conduct business, supposedly. So yesterday, the Secretary of State of Minnesota, who is a Democrat, went to the House of Representatives and told them there's not a quorum, so they've got to recess until they do. However, there is a fight about this now, with the Republican Majority Leader, Harry Niska, going to the House floor yesterday and explaining why he thinks the Secretary of State is wrong.
Mr. Secretary, the House is not adjourned. We do not have authority over the House of Representatives. Minnesota law requires the members of the House of Representatives to meet at noon on Tuesday in the House chamber. As you can see, the DFL caucus has violated the law for the express purpose of preventing the House from organizing and beginning its work.
And so the Democrats to say what we saw in that instance right there is an attempted coup. If that weren't enough, Jim, one of the Democrats of the 66 is, let's say, shaky in his election. This guy named Brad Tabke beat his Republican challenger by 14 votes, yet somehow an audit discovered there were 20 missing ballots from one precinct and one ballot for another precinct. Now, if you're 14 down and 21 ballots to go, you probably wouldn't win, but it certainly doesn't build confidence in your election process over there. So not exactly the most stable way to start a session here. Kind of reminds me of the Wisconsin Democrats hightailing it to Illinois in the Scott Walker era, but what stands out to you here?
Well, I was going to say, my other thought was the Texas legislators who fled to D.C. and various other places in order to deny a quorum. It's you notice it's one party tends to be the one using this trick, and it does seem like a juvenile and ridiculous attempt to throw sand into the gears of government. You know, it always stinks when you lose a vote, but saying I'm going to take my bat and my ball and go home. I mean, look, it kills me to quote Bill Belichick on this podcast, but I'm just going to point out his slogan, "Do your job," really should be above every state legislature and every state capitol and in Washington, D.C. Were you elected to the state legislature? Where are you supposed to be on the first day of the session? Are you supposed to be at your job? Who do you think you are, the mayor of Los Angeles? You are supposed to be in the chamber voting. You can't, I decided to take off and, can't be there. Well, no, sorry. Look, you're always at risk of having this kind of a fight when it's really close. I understand the, irregularities, shall we say, in that one election. I just think that, at a time like this, you would probably want a strong, confident, clear-thinking, clear-speaking leader of the state who could just step in, some sort of coach, some sort of guy who just, who's just known for being a Mr. Fix-It and getting a car. Governor Walz, pretend the state legislature is a carburetor. Fix it, all right? Just get under the hood, as Hegseth says he wants to do at the Pentagon, and just get through your work. By the way, as Republicans in the U.S. House are recognizing, a one-seat majority is not an easy thing to run. You're probably going to have to compromise with the minority party on a whole bunch of stuff. That's just kind of the facts of life of this sort of thing. Who gets to chair a committee? Who gets to run the chamber? Yeah, that makes a difference. But in the end, it's not, the idea of well, we're just not going to show up to work and that'll stop you. No. What is this, the kindergarten playground? Yeah. 2025, off to a roaring start.
It's a mess. One of the big issues here is that Republicans, because they have the one-seat advantage and Democrats would not have the majority even if they win the special election, is Republicans want to organize now and remain the majority party regardless of the outcome of this election for the next 2 years. And, you can fight about that, I guess. But, just to take your ball and go home while this is still playing out, there hasn't even been a special election yet. Just ridiculous. Well, Jim, you did a fantastic job of foreshadowing there in that Minnesota Martini, because we're back out to L.A. for more discussion of Karen Bass. You write about her in the Morning Jolt today and literally what she was doing halfway around the world while her city, specifically the Palisades fire, started to burn. But now she's been back for a number of days. She still kind of has that weird smile for given the horror that her community has been through. But then she gets asked again, was it really a good idea to take that trip? And here's what happens.
Looking back, would you have taken that trip overseas?
I am going to focus today on what we know.
Guess that's her Belichick of we're moving on to tomorrow or something instead of Cincinnati. But she's, it's amazing how these people can't even say, I really wish I had been here to be in this situation to help my people deal with this disaster.
Yeah, look, the reason, people might say, it's been a week, Jim. Aren't you tired of kicking around Karen Bass? No. And what's more, someone said that my writing about her, since since her trip to Ghana has lacked nuance. That is correct. I don't think there's a lot of nuance here. I think that, when you're mayor and there's 2 days before you leave, there's a warning about a severe wildfire risk, you should stick around. Now, if you get there and you don't oh my goodness, it's much worse than we expected, and you attempt to leave early, okay, then at least you could say, as soon as I recognized the severity of the situation, I was on the next flight that was available. The Los Angeles Times had two really big scoops today. One about the Los Angeles Fire Department, City Fire Department, apparently not deploying all the men, the pumper trucks, or other, they call it basically water tanker trucks, could have been pre-positioned, and they were not. Not great. I've tried to, in this podcast, we've generally not given too much grief to the people in the fire department. They got their hands full right now, but I think the time is going to come when this crisis is passed for some serious questions to be asked there. But the other major scoop from the Los Angeles Times was that when the fires were starting and the first reports were going across the citywide alert system, judging by the timing of certain posted pictures on social media, Bass was at a cocktail party at the U.S. Embassy in Ghana. That is really bad. No signs. She doesn't have drinks in her hands in the pictures that are there, but it's a cocktail party at the U.S. Embassy. And I was about to say, like you've been to, which maybe not every listener has. I have been to them, and yeah, they're pretty much what you would picture there. And if it was private citizen Karen Bass, go right ahead, do whatever you want. If the city of Los Angeles hadn't suffered the wildfires, we wouldn't be talking about this. It would still probably be iffy judgment, but I doubt she'll run for re-election. She certainly should not run for re-election. I think it was a strong case that she should be, first of all, she should resign as soon as the crisis is over. A lot of people would argue she should have resigned by now. And it's one of those things where she's done almost nothing. Being over there, being at a cocktail party, literally partying while your city is burning, is about as bad a look as it gets. Then with that exchange you just played the audio of, what do you think you're going to, first of all, she's been grinning the entire time. I don't know if it's Botox. I don't know if it's Smilex gas from the Joker. I don't know if it's that horror movie, The Smile. Someone has to tell her, stop smiling during the worst crisis in your city's history. You look out of it. You look like you're in denial of what's going on. Then there's this thing where, look, you may not have wanted that moment, but this is a good time for a mea culpa. This is a good time for, I should have come back faster. This is a good time. And the fact that she can't do that, to me, makes me think she's operating on some level of psychological denial, that she does not realize the seriousness of the situation, and that she thinks this is just another, political, no pun intended, firestorm that's going to come and go. And, people will forget about this in a while. And I don't think they are. You hear reports from people who live out there. Very apolitical people are livid with the mayor for going away on that trip. And former supporters. The publisher of the Los Angeles Times said we endorsed her and that was a mistake. We should not have done that. This is shaking the people who were the most diehard Karen Bass supporters in the entire city. And so that again, it's really bad to go on that trip and to ignore the warnings. It's really bad to not come back the first sign of trouble. It's really bad the way she's handled it. But to then refuse to apologize and refuse to give any sense of a mea culpa, she just keeps doubling down on the wrong decisions. If you wrote Karen Bass as a fictional character in some Chris Buckley novel or something, I think people would have found that portrayal over the top. And come on, no big city mayor is going to be that bad in a crisis. Well, this is what you've got, Los Angeles. Hope better days are ahead.
And then there's your governor, but that's a whole other story. But Jim, quite a day. I will see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. Be sure to subscribe to the 3 Martini Lunch podcast if you don't already. Follow us on YouTube as well. Great things happening there and more to come soon. Also, thanks for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. They're a huge help to us. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a great Wednesday and join us again on Thursday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.